So just to start things off, Dan, can you just tell me a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So I run a photography and video production company, a studio based in Ledbury. So just over the border, slightly from Worcestershire, but we're pretty close. And we specialise in producing video and photography for industrial companies, so sort of manufacturers, tech companies, that sort of thing.
And can you tell me a little bit of sort of how you got into that? So if you just sort of take me back to your early school days first of all, and just sort of run me through your career journey.
GCSE, I was kind of a lot more into the kind of maths and physics and that side of things. That was kind of where my skills were, I suppose, in terms of what you have to do at that stage anyway, in terms of school and everything and exams. A level, I did maths, physics and politics, which is a bit of a bizarre sort of combination, but I don't know. I think I was kind of interested in politics at that stage for some reason, and also thought that I should try and maintain a sort of writing based subject, because the maths and the physics, obviously you don't do much in the way of writing. So yeah, that was kind of the reason for that choice, and that went okay. I think, what did I do? I think I got a B in maths and physics, and then a C in politics. And then from there, I had a year off. I didn't really feel like rushing into university. I'd always sort of felt like I was going to go to university. Guess we can talk more later about the relevance of that and whether I still would a bit later, but I didn't really feel like rushing straight into it. So I took a year off, did the kind of, traveling thing, going to Australia and New Zealand and generally bumming about for a year. It was a bit of a waste of time, probably. And then went to uni and did mechanical engineering up in Leeds. So yeah, why did I do that? Well, again, because I think it was kind of the maths and the physics side of it that was interesting me the most, or that I was best at least. So I decided to do mechanical engineering. So after uni, I again had a year off because I didn't know what to do. I literally didn't know what I was going to do after uni. I think I did quite well at uni. I got a first, or I kind of scraped a first anyway. So academically I'd done okay, but I don't think I felt sort of completely equipped for the workplace, really. I guess I didn't really know what to expect or what was coming up. Maybe I wasn't really behind it enough, I don't know. But I took a year off and went snowboarding, did a snowboarding season, and then came back and thought, I better try and get a job. So I was living near Cambridge at that point. That's where I grew up. And there was a company there called Marshall Aerospace, and they were hiring for young engineers, kind of graduates, to come and do a 6-week training course. And if you sort of passed the tests, the exams and the coursework at the end of that 6 weeks, then they offered you a job. I didn't really do much sort of prep for that in terms of knowing what the job was and what it was about. I just knew it was aerospace engineering and I thought it sounded interesting. So I went and did that. Again, I was probably quite good at doing tests and exams and things. So I got through and got the job. And yeah, looking back on it, really, I never really properly enjoyed that work in aerospace engineering. It sounds quite, fun and exciting, but what I was actually doing was analysis work that I think I just wasn't really fully behind, but I managed to keep doing it. I think I distracted myself with various things like hobbies and girlfriends and buying a house and things like that enough that I could put up with the work during the day. And that's how I see it now anyway. Yeah, kept doing it. I stayed at Marshall's for like 5 years, I think, 5.5 years. Then I moved down to Bristol, worked at Airbus for a couple of years doing pretty similar work. Again, never really enjoying it, not knowing what to do. I think I'd always known that I wanted to do something myself, but I just didn't know what. I didn't know how to get started. And, I just had no idea what that would be, because I felt like I was in a tight niche with what I was doing, and it didn't feel like I had any transferable skills. So after about a year and a half in Bristol, I met who was going to become my wife, and we got married, and I moved up this way, so just outside Ledbury to start with. And I moved jobs after that because commuting down to Bristol was a bit horrendous. Didn't really add to the already dissatisfaction with the job. So I moved up here, but again to another aerospace company doing basically the same type of work. So I kind of was able to put up with doing that work for quite a long time, slightly embarrassingly. And about, what was it, about a year after we got married, I think, my wife had a women's clothes shop at that point when I met her. And we decided at one point we'd build a website for the shop. And I thought, okay, I'll get a camera and do all the product photography for that, even though I'd never picked up a camera in my life. I just sort of fancied it for some reason. So I did that, bought a second-hand camera. We had a photographer friend who came and helped and got all the photography done, and sort of thought I was really enjoying it. Probably about 8 months later, I think we actually had to close the shop down in the end. Well, we took the decision to close the shop down in the end. It wasn't in a very good state financially. We had a young baby. It needed a lot of my wife's time, which and so did the baby. So it just wasn't in a good place. We actually moved in with my in-laws for a few months to see if we could rescue it, but it was just too far gone really financially by that time. So we closed that down, moved into a small place in Ledbury because we had a lot of debt from the shop that had accumulated over the years, unfortunately, and so we had to cut our costs back. But in the meantime, I'd discovered photography, and about a month after we closed it down, my wife was in the local wine shop in Ledbury, and she kind of knew them from the shop and everything, from them supplying things for events and that sort of thing. And the owner mentioned that they were having a website built and needed to do some product photography, and she didn't know where to start with it. And my wife said, "Oh, I'm sure that I'll come and have a go." So I did, and managed to get some good enough results, and charged her a little bit of money for it, and ended up shooting about 2,000 bottles, I think, that a year, because they had a lot of wines and whiskies and beers and everything. But yeah, I thought to myself, well, this is quite cool. I actually got paid for doing something that I enjoyed doing, probably the first time I had. And I thought, well, I wonder if I could turn this into something. And I didn't really know much at that stage. I had a hell of a lot to learn about the photography. We still had the debt to pay off, so I was in my engineering. I'd gone back to my engineering job because we had to work our way through that debt. But in the meantime, I took to learning as much as I could about photography and teaching myself. And eventually, started to pick up a couple of paid jobs here and there, built the website. And at first, I thought I was going to do wedding photography, but then decided I'd rather do commercial photography. So, built the website in about 2015, I think, or 16, maybe 16. And yeah, as I say, gradually started picking up more clients, to the point where I decided I could go part-time with the engineering job. That was in 2017. Went down to 3 days a week doing that, and then a year later managed to get to the point where I felt comfortable to jump in full-time with the photography and make it my full-time career, which had been the dream for a few years before that. At some point along there, we also started doing a bit of video. So I started kind of working with some local videographers, and doing video under my brand, and that side of things has really grown a lot, to the point now where I've got a full-time videographer working here. So we're doing an awful lot of video and quite a bit of photography as well.
So it sounds like you've had a career journey that's sort of taken lots of twists and turns, and it's not the most conventional of career journeys potentially compared to some others. How big of a risk was it for you to sort of go and set up your own company, and how much do you think it's benefited you? So you sort of said, you touched on in there a lot about the fact you didn't really enjoy your engineering career. How difficult was it to maybe leave that stable income? You knew that the paycheck was going to be there every month. How difficult was it to leave that, something so uncertain, but something that you sort of much preferred and much more enjoyed?
It is hard, especially when you've got used to that over the years. As you say, you've got used to the regular paycheck and everything. But I think, I watched a lot of, sort of personal development type things and read a lot of books and that sort of thing. And that kind of gives you some confidence in that you start to realize that other people have done it. And, you start to think, well, maybe I could do it as well then. But yeah, you're right. It's hard making that jump because it's uncertain. I mean, everything. It's a leap of faith, really, jumping into your own thing. And yeah, I mean, I have a family to support and a house to run and everything like that. So there's a lot more pressure on it now than there would have been if I was in my early 20s or something, and done it then. So yeah, it's hard, and probably harder than I thought in some ways, because you read all this stuff and hear all this stuff and people saying, they did it and they're all in and go for it and blah, blah, blah. And you kind of can get motivated by that, but that doesn't actually necessarily get you through it. You've still got to go through it. Yeah, there's been plenty of, times when I've thought, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? This is crazy. I need to just go back and get a job. Yeah, there's a lot of times when you doubt yourself, and you shouldn't underplay that really, because it's been a lot. And I don't know if you ever really get used to the sort of ups and downs of the income when you're self-employed, but you start to gain a bit more confidence in it, I suppose, the more you do it. But yeah, I mean, after I left my job in beginning of September 2018, and I thought, I had a few things booked in. I thought, right, it's going to be okay. And I remember I was actually shooting a wedding, which I don't really do much these days, but at the end of October that year. And so I was chatting to one of the guests, and they said, oh, cool. So yeah, you got lots of work booked in. And I thought for a second, and I thought, actually, I haven't got anything booked in now. This is it. I've literally got nothing else booked in. I was like, oh no. So that was a bit of a testing winter, really, eating through some reserves and I did a little bit of other work, non-photography related, to just make ends meet for a little bit. But then it started building back up again. So yeah, it's hard.
And although it's sort of been a struggle and it's been difficult, have you enjoyed going to work? Is that sort of side of it, maybe the lack of the financial side of it and the uncertainty of the financial side of it, but have you enjoyed going to work more now, and how important has that been to you sort of in your wider life as well?
Yeah, it's been massive, really. And yeah, I shouldn't play up the hardship part of it, because the upside has been great. I mean, I was really getting quite down in my job. You're in a job for the majority of the hours in the week, really. If you're there 8 hours a day, I think I was doing 9 or 10 hours mostly. So you're there for minimum 40 hours a week. You're asleep for about 40 hours, and then you've got weekends and the mornings and evenings. So your work time that you're at work is a lot of the time. So if you're doing something that you're really not enjoying, it can really get to you. And I remember I'd come home from that work just feeling very lethargic, not much energy, just a bit down in the dumps and stuff. And yeah, when I was able to start doing my own thing, I was just completely different person, really. I come home in the evenings and I feel full of energy, even if it's been really hard days shoot, because photo and video shoots are hard work. They're physically and mentally tiring, but I come home and I feel energized, and I'm a much better husband and father, hopefully, and I just feel mentally better and probably physically better as well from it as well. So yeah, it's been massive.
Yeah, I think the sort of important message in there as well is that it's sort of enjoying your job and can have such a massive impact on the sort of outside life of the job as well. And there's much more to life than just working, isn't there? That you need to enjoy things, and you don't want to be sort of dreading to go into work on the Monday morning. So, could you just talk to me a little bit about the skills that have been important to you then, Dan, throughout your career journey? So whether those skills have maybe changed a little bit from those initial engineering roles into the role you're in now, or whether there's been any key transferable skills that have really helped you throughout your journey, sort of to where you are now. So can you just tell me a little bit about skills that have been important to you?
The skills that you learn at school, or that I learned at school and at university, were kind of relevant to the job that I did in engineering, but maybe not as much as they could have been. As I said, I don't think I felt completely ready for work when I came out of university. I could do the exams and I could pass the tests, and I think that's probably a slight downfall of the system at the moment, is that we teach people to get good at taking tests. And if you're good at taking tests, you get the grades, but that doesn't necessarily equip you for the sort of, what you're going to do in work, in your job. Everything you learn is relevant, isn't it? I mean, you should always be learning, and those skills are always going to be useful. I sort of relearned, or not relearned, but I've learned a lot more since university, because I've obviously taught myself the skills of photography and everything like that, and then also been at the same time having to teach myself about how to run a business, because that's a whole separate craft on its own, really. You've got the craft of the thing that you do, which in my case is the photography and the video. And then you've got the craft of running the business and doing all the marketing and the sales and, dealing with clients and everything like that. And they're two separate things. So obviously your kind of, your maths and your English and all of that sort of skills are always going to be useful for whatever you do. But there's a lot more as well that I think people should look at teaching themselves, especially if they want to run their own business, because you've got all the financial side of it, the business side of it, as I said, like the marketing and everything, and you've got to look after the numbers and taxes you've got to pay and make everything work and your expenses and all of that side of things. So I think everything's been relevant.
So earlier on as well, sort of in a previous answer, you touched on the fact sort of you did a gap year before university and a gap year afterwards. How important was sort of going to maybe different cultures? Obviously, Australia and New Zealand are fairly similar to our culture, but how important was it doing that little bit of travelling? Sort of was it on your own or in a group, or how important was sort of doing that at an early age and getting out and seeing the world?
I think it was useful. Yeah, when I went to Australia and New Zealand, I just went on my own. I just packed up a backpack and went out there on my own with no real plan. I probably could have got a bit more out of it if I'd have had a bit of a plan, I suppose, of like where I was going to go and things like that. But I think in terms of confidence, it was a big help. It helped build up my confidence. Just being there on your own, and having to go meet people and start those conversations and everything. So. Yeah, I think it's a useful thing. I think, as I say, I probably could have done it a bit better because you kind of end up just like drinking a lot, really, when you go around Australia and New Zealand. But I think travel. I think travel's always good. I wouldn't discourage anyone from traveling, but maybe just have a bit more of a plan and sort of think about what you want to do while you're out there, maybe.
And I suppose you sort of touched on confidence in there. I suppose that confidence that you sort of that you sort of built throughout that sort of travel, that must have helped you in your career journey.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I remember getting to university and sort of feeling as though you could tell the people that had been traveling and those that hadn't. They just seemed a bit more confident, or at least able to go into those situations where you don't know anyone a bit more confidently, maybe. So yeah, I think it probably has, but I think you build up real confidence when as you build up skills and you learn how to do things. Real confidence comes from knowing what you're doing, and knowing what you're doing comes from practice and learning and really trying to become the best that you can at something.
Let's throw it back a little bit then, and sort of look through your career journey a little bit again. Have you had any mentors or people who inspired you to do what you do? You said you sort of read a lot of books on personal development. So was there anything in there, that bits of inspiration that you sort of took away from them, that potentially young people can sort of relate to as well and take away, and hopefully they could sort of see those bits of inspiration that you've seen yourself?
Definitely, that's a really good point. There was one book in particular that kind of kick-started all of that, which was called Screw Work, Let's Play, and it's by a guy called John Williams. He's just written an updated one. I don't think I can say the title on a council podcast. But you'll find it anyway. And that was really inspirational, actually, in terms of seeing that there was a different route I could take and not being afraid to try it. So some of, at that stage when I read that book, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I sort of knew I enjoyed doing photography, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And so some of the exercises that he recommends in that book, for example, were doing a kind of brainstorming thing where you'd like pretend that you had a year off and you had all the money that you needed and there was no financial pressure, and you had to just write down all the things that you would do in that year off. And then you kind of did it again and again. And then you go back and you'd look at the things that kept popping up, and that would kind of give you an idea as to what you might enjoy doing for work, because that's the things that you write down are things that you would do if, even if you weren't getting paid for them. Just because you enjoy them. And I did that. He also recommended having some what he called playtime each week. So that's just giving yourself some time to just try different things and just have a play, really. So in engineering, in aerospace engineering anyway, they tend to not work Friday afternoons. So I had Friday afternoons off. So for a little while, my wife very kindly took our baby out at the time on a Friday afternoon to free me up to just sit in the house and just have a bit of a play. So like I I tried some sort of 3D printing designs, and and read this book and just stuff like that, just to do things that were different and see what I enjoyed, and that was massively helpful. And I ended up doing a 6-month mentorship program with John Williams in, I think it was 2016. And I had a couple of business ideas, and I built a couple of websites in that time, and he taught me through it and everything. And that's actually when I built my Dan Barker Studios website, was during that mentorship with him. But yeah, having mentors has been incredibly important. I mean, I've got a couple at the moment. One who I've been with for nearly 4 years, actually. So, guy named Vincent Puglisi in the States. I heard him on a podcast. Actually, that's the other thing we should talk about is podcasts and audiobooks and stuff. But I heard him on a podcast, and his story was like what I wanted to do. He'd left his job and built a photography business and managed to like pay off all his debts, pay off his mortgage and everything. And he had 3 kids, which I did at the time. And I was like, wow, I need to talk to this guy, and got in touch with him, and he was offering, coach, like one-to-one coaching calls. So yeah, I've been with him for nearly 4 years. I've just started with another group over here in the UK. But yeah, having mentors is extremely important.
And go on, and so you sort of touched on podcasts and audiobooks in there. You've got your own podcast, I do believe.
Yeah.
A couple of things about that. How important has that been to you to sort of build your network around Worcestershire? So obviously it's about the 3 counties: Worcestershire, Herefordshire, and Staffordshire. Am I correct?
Gloucestershire.
Gloucestershire, that's the one.
Yeah.
Nearly there. So how important has that been for you to build your network around the county?
Yeah, it's been great, actually. As I said, like I touched on podcasts and audiobooks then. I mean, they were massive for me, and still are, really, because I'd spend my commute to work listening to podcasts and audiobooks. So I was driving half an hour there, half an hour back. I'd have half an hour lunchtime, stick a podcast or audiobook on, and kind of surrounding myself virtually with people that were living the life that I wanted to in terms of running their businesses. And that's all they were talking about all the time, So although I was at work in a job that I wasn't really enjoying, I was sort of virtually surrounding myself with these people and listening to, how they live and what they think about, and the different things that crop up and everything. So that's another thing I'd recommend to people, is to, listen to podcasts, surround yourself if you can, physically, but if not virtually, with people that are doing what you want to do. But in terms of my podcast, it's been great, really. It's been that I started recording episodes beginning of December last year, and then I launched it beginning of February with eight episodes. And currently, as we're recording, I've got enough guests booked in to take me up to the beginning of February at the moment. And it's been amazing. The uptake has been great, and I've really enjoyed doing it, which is always a good indicator of what you should be doing. But in terms of building a network, it's been fantastic. I mean, you found me through the podcast, and I've been introduced to more and more people, and I've had people in on the podcast who I'd never met before, who were referred by other people. And so the network building side of it's been fantastic, and been really good fun. And hopefully I think I've been a help to other people as well. I know there's certainly a couple of people I know who've got some work through it, where other people have heard the episode with them. So it's been cool. It's good fun.
Yeah, and it's certainly opened my eyes as well to sort of the different careers and different people who are sort of in and around Worcestershire, and obviously in and around Gloucestershire and Herefordshire as well. And it really opened my eyes in a couple of episodes that I've listened to. And I think an important thing that you touched on in there as well is how you sort of listen to podcasts on your lunch break, and on the way to work and on the way home. And I think for young people, it's important to sort of note that everyone's got a phone, and now all this fantastic material is so easily accessible. You don't have to go to the bookstore anymore and buy a book on every single thing you want to listen to. Now it's all within the palm of your hand, isn't it?
Yeah, it's crazy how much information is there and accessible through your phone. I mean, just before I left Airbus, I was really lucky enough to go on a training course that was based around a book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. I don't know if you come across it. It was a great training course. It was 2 days, and it was based around this book, which is a personal development book. And that was really my very first sort of introduction to the whole personal development thing. And one of the things he talks about there is, choices, and how everyone's got a choice. And, it can be hard to hear sometimes if you don't want to hear it, but it is true that we do have a choice. And, you can either, if you're not happy with what you're doing, you can choose to make changes or choose not to. And unfortunately, if you end the day and go home and, like I used to go out and do different things, go out and sort of distract myself with hobbies or going to the pub or whatever. Not there's anything wrong with having hobbies and stuff. We should all have hobbies and interests outside of what we do. But if you're distracting yourself with all that stuff to get away from the fact that you don't like your job, then that's not going to enable you to create the changes that you want to make. And so that's when you've got to sort of make a choice to, as like I say, surround yourself with those people or learn something new or, work at it to make the change that you want. And I think now when I look back on it, I guess that's what was happening really when I was, reading that book that I mentioned, Screw Out, Let's Play. It's kind of like saying, right, I've had enough. I've got to make some changes. And there's plenty of times over those years when I was just feeling desperate and I was just like, I want to make a change. I just got to make it work. I've got to make it work. And, getting down about it sometimes and, having moments where it was going well. But yeah, if you're not happy with where you're at, like you said, there's so much out there that you can access for free. But as I said, having mentors that I pay as well has been massive because if you're paying for something, you're really going to take note of it. All the free stuff's excellent and really worth it. But if you're paying someone a few £100 to see them for an hour once a month, you're going to take note of what they say. You're going to listen and you're going to do it because you've got skin in the game, as I say.
But I think that, like you said, the beauty of it now is that it's so accessible and so much of it is free. There's so many different people around the world, business owners, etc., have done numerous amounts of podcasts, audiobooks, etc., YouTube videos, you name it. And whatever you're passionate about, there will be something that ticks your boxes.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You can access stuff on, whatever you like. And yeah, you can sort of spend that time doing something productive like that
Yeah.
and trying to learn, or you can go and spend that time flicking through TikTok or whatever. And, that's the choice that you make, isn't it? Because we've all got a finite amount of time in the day.
Absolutely.
And, I'm not saying that I'm, I certainly spend time flicking through Instagram or whatever when I shouldn't, and it creeps in and takes over sometimes. I'm not perfect by any means, but I realise, when I've done that, and I say, right, Dan, you've just wasted time there. You've just wasted 20 minutes when you could have been doing something productive, or spending time with the kids, or just sitting down and relaxing or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. We've only got a finite amount of time. There's only 24 hours in a day, so you have got to spend them wisely, haven't you? So we normally at the end of an episode we ask guests to sort of give a bit of advice to their younger self. So I suppose this question maybe is still relevant, but sort of the question I'm going to ask you is, if a young person's sat maybe, I don't know, let's say GCSEs, just about to pick their GCSEs, or even further on, just about to pick their A levels. And they're flicking through the university prospectuses and looking at what they want to do and where they want to go and the careers they want to do, and they're looking at the salary bits on it, etc., etc. Let's say they have a real passion for music, but actually they're really good at the maths and the science, and like yourself, might engineering is probably going to be a little bit better route, or going to science fields is going to be a better route because it's going to pay me more money. I might not enjoy it as much, but that's where I'm going to be able to create an income. What would your message to them be? Would you say, actually, no, go and follow your passion early on in music and make a successful career out of it, because it is possible? Or is there only option to go down that engineering route and sort of not be completely content with their career?
It's it's hard to give advice, like general advice, because everyone's situation is different and everyone feels different pressures and things like that. But I would say, I guess, if I could sort of show my younger self anything, it would be the kind of time, like that feeling of doing something that you don't enjoy. Somehow, if you could demonstrate that to someone, that is how soul destroying that is, really, that feeling. And I think it's to be more, I think you've got to be honest with yourself about what you enjoy doing. And, there are lots of people who are looking out for you and want the best for you, but their advice would be, to take the safe route because maybe that's what they've done, or they've had a bad experience that's meant they've gone back to the safe route, and so they think the safe route's the best route. But I think don't give up on stuff, because if if you're really into something and you're passionate about it, it's so much easier to learn more and follow that route and become great at it than it is to do something that you don't really enjoy, because you're never going to really become great at it. I mean, like I was pretty good at my engineering jobs if I could get to a reasonable level and everything, but I was just never fully behind that particular type of engineering that I was doing. And as such, I don't think I could really progress any further because I wasn't fully behind it. So just because something's your passion doesn't mean it's going to be easy either, but it's going to be easier to push through the barriers and learn things. So I would say don't give up on what you love doing, and if you really want it, you can find a way to make it work. And I'd also be really just questioning if getting into such a huge amount of debt is a good route for what you're trying to do. By going to university, it's not always. I just don't think. We spoke about how many resources there are out there now. Is university really what you need to do? Because I think when you're 18, I mean, I came out of uni with a bit of debt, but nothing compared to what they're coming out with now, which I don't even know what it would be. What are we talking, like 60?
I think it's
80 grand?
Yeah, something like that. Anywhere between sort of 40 and 80, I think, depends on the course that you do.
Yeah, that is a huge amount of money to be in debt to, and the feeling of being in debt is horrible. And I know, like, people just treat it as another tax and everything, but it's still something that you're indebted to, that you've got hanging over you the whole time. And I think there's a lot of merit to just going out and doing something and learning by doing it. I mean, I had a great time at university, don't get me wrong, and met some of my best friends and everything. But in terms of my career, was it really worth it or necessary? I'm not sure.
And like you say, that you do get the experience out of university, but as we've sort of touched on before in previous episodes with previous people, apprenticeships are a brilliant route, especially in Worcestershire. There's sort of there's numerous amounts of apprenticeships in Worcestershire, and that is an alternative to university. And as you sort of said there, if sort of the sort of viewpoint that I have on it as well, unless it's absolutely necessary, university for your career, so you want to be a doctor or a nurse, or you want to go down into those routes that require you to have a degree, I think you should definitely deeply consider your options before you take that plunge and, like Dan says, put yourself into that sort of debt.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said, I probably didn't make the most of my university degree, so maybe I'm not the right person to speak to. But a lot of it is passing tests and getting that result, and waiting for someone else to tell you that you're good enough and everything. And I don't know that's necessarily useful the way it's set up at the moment.
Well, thank you very much for joining me today, Dan.
It's a pleasure.
It's been really insightful. I think a lot of young people will hopefully take a lot away from that. Do you want to sort of drop your name of your podcast so people can go and find it and give it a listen?
Yeah, sure. It's the Thriving Three Counties podcast, so you can find it on all the usual podcast players, and it's also embedded on my website at danbarkerstudios.com/podcast, so you can go on there and listen to any of the episodes as well. So yeah, thanks, Joe. It's been good.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Dan.